brilliant soldier, a revolutionary statesman, a man who joined his fate with the destiny of his nation. In 1915, at Gallipoli, he handed the British one of the most devastating defeats in their history. In 1918, he emerged from World War I as the only undefeated Ottoman commander. 4 years later, he led his people in their struggle against the invading Greek forces and won back their independence. In 1923, on the ruins of the defunct Ottoman Empire, he founded and became the first president of the Republic of Turkey. 6 months later, he became the first leader to attack and defeat Islamic theocracy. With the seeds of democracy he planted, the nation he cultivated endured tribulations both from inside and outside for decades. Stalin considered him a fascist. Hitler and Mussolini said he was a communist. Others called him a dictator. His people called him Atatürk, Father Turk. The mighty Ottoman Empire. This multinational, multilingual dynasty, for centuries the most glorious, most feared empire of the world. At its height, under the rule of the world-famous Solomon the Magnificent in the 16th century, the empire encompassed southern Europe, Arabia, Near Asia, North Africa, threatening the gates of Vienna. By late 19th century, the glorious days of the Ottomans were distant memories of the past. Lagging behind the progress in the rest of the world, the empire was ridiculed by the Western powers as the sick man of Europe. After an unsuccessful attempt in constitutional democracy in 1876, the Ottoman Empire became more autocratic and theocratic under the rule of Abdul Hamid II, Caliph and Sultan. Caliph, the head of the Muslim world, Sultan, head of state. Reacting to the intrusions of the Western powers into the empire's internal affairs, he turned the country into a police state and ruled with merciless authority for 33 years. However, even his despotic rule could not prevent the ideas of nationalism and democracy, so active in the Balkans, from entering the young minds of his subject soldiers. Into this theocratic and despotic rule, rising tide of nationalism and internal unrest, Atatürk was born as an Ottoman. He would die a Turk. Salonika, the largest, most important port city of the Ottoman Empire in Europe. A crucial extension of the empire, its multi-ethnic structure was composed of Jews, Turks, Greeks, Armenians, and other Balkan Christians. Zubaydah Hanim and her customs clerk husband, Ali Riza Effendi, lived in the Turkish region of this cosmopolitan city. In 1881, after the deaths of all three previous children, they experienced the birth of a son.
Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was born into a house of mourning, house of death.
His mother was young and that she had had children before he was born, and the children had died, and he was what in psychological terms would be called a replacement child. And in being a replacement child, he was extremely special, very special to his mother, very special role in the family.
In one way, he held on being special. He held on being immortal. He held on being a repairer. This aspect of him was true. It was a reality for him because his mother perceived him as such. And since he was extremely bright, he added his own intelligence and brightness and so on. So he developed a nucleus of being a repairer, omnipotent person, or future omnipotent person. The second major event outside of early mother-child relationship was the father's death, and before his death, giving his son a gift.
His mother, who was a much more religious person who was known sort of as a mullah, that she could always discourse on religious themes, wanted him to go to the local school in the mosque and perhaps follow a religious career and become an alim or a qadi or something like that. She wanted that very much. His father wanted him to go to a newly opened Western school, Shamsi Effendi School, and so they enrolled him. His father enrolled him along with his mother for the first day in the local religious school, and then took him out and put him in the Western school.
Mustafa's father changed not only the destiny of his son, but also that of the Turkish nation. Seeing the difference between religious education, which chained all free thought, and the Western school, which encouraged freedom and equality, Mustafa came to value modern education and intellectual freedom. After hardships and stints in other schools following his father's death, Mustafa, despite his mother's opposition, entered the exams for the military school in Salonika in 1893 and passed.
He always wanted to wear a uniform, which is one of the things that enticed him to go to military school, and he struck quite a handsome figure in his uniforms, which did a lot for his own self-esteem and helping him to develop a sense of who he was.
After 2 years in the Salonika secondary school, Mustafa, now referred to as Mustafa Kemal, was admitted to the Monastir Military Training School in 1895. His first time away from home, Monastir made him aware of the larger situation outside of school and in the European section of the empire.
Young Mustafa Kemal was exposed to ethnic diversity. He was exposed to ideas of nationalism. He was exposed to Western and Jewish cultures.
At school, he made friends who introduced him to poetry and the banned works of famous French philosophers. He began to devour Rousseau, Voltaire, Montesquieu, and the patriotic Turkish poet Namık Kemal, very often into the early hours of the morning and in secret. The young Mustafa Kemal began to think of realistic solutions for the problems of the empire. He was becoming more and more concerned with the despotic condition of the country and its future. Foreign agents, fueled and guided by the great powers, were provoking the minorities against the empire. In 1897, tension over the island of Crete culminated in a war between the Greeks and the Turks. Seeing the mobilized troops march to the front, Mustafa Kemal could not stop nationalist and patriotic feelings from boiling inside him. 2 years later, Mustafa Kemal graduated to the Imperial War College in Istanbul. He was ready for the legendary Ottoman capital. The heart of